Let's talk about the Seattle Seahawks because the Seahawks have made a lot of moves over the last 72 hours. They came out and they cut Rayshon Jenkins and also Draymond Jones. Now, these are not huge moves for the Seattle Seahawks. They can go into free agency and bring in yet another rotational pass rusher and yet another rotational safety. The biggest move that they have made so far is cutting Tyler Lockett, a veteran that has been with the team for his entire career. When you look at Tyler Lockett, he's going to be beloved by the Seattle Seahawks fan base for the rest of his career. Since 2015, he has been a solid veteran wide receiver inside that slot. But over the last 2 years, he has regressed and he is getting older. He only had 600 receiving yards this previous season and 2 receiving touchdowns. The last time that he was a huge playmaker for the Seattle Seahawks was in 2023. He had 894 receiving yards, 5 receiving touchdowns. But you saw the writing on the wall. When they drafted Jackson Smith and Najigba, and when you saw them go out there and move on from Pete Carroll, you knew that veterans like this would not be on this team long term. And I do expect for Tyler Lockett to find another team in free agency. Because when you look at the wide receiving class right now in free agency, it's not the best. T. Higgins just got franchise tagged by the Cincinnati Bengals. They're going to bring him back regardless. Cooper Kupp, he's up for a trade. Do you want to bring in a veteran wide receiver that's been dealing with a lot of injuries over the last 2 years? So I look at Tyler Lockett, expect for him to be a top name as a free agent wide receiver. And you also have Devontae Adams, but it seems like he wants to play with Aaron Rodgers yet again. And when I look at Tyler Lockett, I look at Pete Carroll, the Las Vegas Raiders. That makes a lot of sense in my opinion. But it's more than just cutting those veteran players. DK Metcalf has requested a trade. And the Seattle Seahawks, they're willing to move on from DK Metcalf for the right price. DK Metcalf wants to go to a contender. I don't agree with this move. If the Seattle Seahawks do trade DK Metcalf, you're not going to be the same team that you have been over the last 6 seasons with him. Now, every single last one of you guys, you've listened to this channel for quite some time. You know how I feel about DK Metcalf. In my opinion, he's one of the best wide receivers in the game. He's a video game character come to life. He has the ideal size and the speed at that position, and he is still a true number 1. Now, you can move on from DK Metcalf for a possible first-round pick, but I can see a team coming out and offering just a second or a third-round pick to bring in DK Metcalf because he has 1 year left on his deal, and it is a chance that he can come back to the team, but he's entering the last year of his contract. He wants a contract extension. Therefore, if a team does come out and they trade for DK Metcalf, they're going to use that against the Seattle Seahawks in negotiations. They're going to say, hey, we're trading a draft pick for him and we have to pay him also. And we're talking about a wide receiver that missed some time this previous season dealing with a knee injury. Now, it was not a major knee injury, but he did miss some games. And you saw the offense take a step back when he was not on the field. And a lot of that is because Ryan Grubb was the offensive coordinator. He was a terrible offensive coordinator all season long with the Seattle Seahawks. Coach McDonald, in my opinion, he's going to be a great head coach long term. The defense looked better this season than it has over the last 4 to 5 years with Pete Carroll. But he has to get the offensive side of the ball right. You fire Ryan Grubb after his first year. He's a former offensive coordinator for Washington when they went to the national championship against Michigan. You fire him, you bring in Clint Kubiak, who did a lot of good things with the New Orleans Saints. I hope if they do move on from DK Metcalf, and I think that they should not, but if you move on from DK Metcalf, you have to bring in yet another wide receiver to help out Jackson Smith and Najigba, because Jackson Smith and Najigba, he has been a superstar. He had 1,130 receiving yards, 6 receiving touchdowns, but he is not the same type of wide receiver that DK Metcalf is. Metcalf can take over a game, and sure, he'll have some games that make you scratch your head to where he only has 60 or 70 receiving yards, but he is a guy that a lot of teams, they focus in on. They'll still revolve their defense around stopping DK Metcalf. They'll put him in double team situations, so now Jackson Smith and Najigba, he's in one-on-one situations. And Jackson Smith and Najigba, he is still going to get his numbers. He's a slot wide receiver. He can play on the outside. But you're not going to double cover a slot wide receiver every single time. Look at CeeDee Lamb with the Dallas Cowboys. Regardless of who he's playing, he's going to put up big-time numbers because he's playing inside the slot. But you have to bring more options on the outside. Losing Tyler Lockett, it is going to hurt in the short term, but in the long term, you're going to save money, and you should be able to groom some guys at that wide receiving position. But if you move on from DK Metcalf, Your number one is easily Jackson Smith-Njigba, and then you have Jake Bobo. That would be your number two wide receiver. That is not a good situation with the Seahawks. They are very thin at that position. And I look at a guy like Noah Fant. He was selected in the first round many years ago by the Denver Broncos. He's a solid receiving tight end, but he's not a top receiving tight end. He's not a Brock Bowers. He's not a George Kittle. He's not a Travis Kelce. He's not going to go out there and be your number two target every single game. He benefits a lot also from playing alongside DK Metcalf. And they got him in that trade when they traded Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos. So if you move on from DK Metcalf, you have to bring in some more wide receiving help. And I don't see them trading for Cooper Kupp because that's an in-division trade because he plays with the Los Angeles Rams. But I look at the Seahawks. You're not that far off with DK Metcalf on your roster. They are not a Super Bowl contending team with Geno Smith at the quarterback position, but they can make the NFL playoffs. They did that in his first year when he was fully starting with the Seahawks, and they lost against the San Francisco 49ers. And since then, they have been an up and down team, even with Pete Carroll. But we saw it from this previous season. You were in a tie-breaking situation with the Los Angeles Rams, and then the last three games spiraled out of control for Seattle. And a lot of that is because of how bad the offense was. And Geno Smith did not have his best year. And he wants a contract extension with the team also. 21 passing touchdowns to 15 interceptions. 4,320 passing yards. Even though he did not have his best season, it was not all on Geno Smith. This is the one thing with the Seahawks that they have not solved in the last 5 years. This offensive line. Now, you drafted Charles Cross, who is a tremendous player at the left tackle position. That right tackle position, Abraham Lucas, he is solid, but he can rarely stay healthy. This is back-to-back years with that knee injury that he has not been able to fully finish a season. Just a year ago, you had to bring in Jason Peters to play the right tackle position because Abraham Lucas was out dealing with a knee injury. He suffered a knee injury against the Los Angeles Rams. We go back a year ago, that's when Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas both went down. And I don't care who you are at the quarterback position. You could be Patrick Mahomes. You could be Jaden Daniels. You could be CJ, Joe Burrow, whomever. You have to have the right offensive pieces up front to block for you. And I'm not trying to put Geno Smith in the same conversation with those quarterbacks because he's not a top quarterback in the NFL. But Geno Smith is not one of the worst starters to have. And especially for the Seahawks right now, you should pay him a 2 to 3 year deal and then groom a quarterback behind him. Maybe a quarterback like Jackson Dart and see if he can come in and he could take over for Geno Smith because Geno Smith is not getting any younger either. But I think he's good enough right now to be a starting quarterback for Seattle for the next 2 to 3 years. But you have to fix this offensive line, the guard position and the right tackle position. I like Abraham Lucas, but you need to put a lot of draft capital and go into free agency and bring in some veteran players to help out this offensive line. And you mix that in with the fact that Ryan Grubb was so pass heavy, and we saw this at the college level. He just coached Michael Penix Jr., Roma Dunze, and Jalen Polk. They rarely ran the football at Washington. He tried to bring that over to the NFL, and you're a one-dimensional team, and it's not going to work out. Before week 12, Geno Smith was leading the league in pass attempts. He was averaging 38 pass attempts a game. Geno Smith is not that type of quarterback to go out there and be passing the football over 30 times a game, even though I really like Geno Smith. You have to play complementary football with him. But you look at Kenneth Walker III, I think he's a very good running back. He's dealt with a lot of injuries over his career. Only had 573 rushing yards, 7 rushing touchdowns. He only averaged 3.7 yards a carry, but you have Zach Charbonnet. That's a 1-2 punch right there. So Kenneth Walker III, he has the juice coming out of the backfield. He's a more explosive running back out of the two. Run that split back system. Give Zach Charbonnet the tough carries when it's 3rd and 3. Have him running between the tackles. And when you need an explosive play, you go to Kenneth Walker III because he could not carry majority of the workload throughout the entire season. You can go into certain games and give him 20 plus carries in a matchup, but not every single week. We have seen this in the past. He would deal with those injuries. His body just can't take it. And it's not me saying that he's a bad running back. A lot of running backs in the NFL, they're not bell cow running backs, but they're very good players. That's just the nature of the game. Not every running back that you draft is going to be Saquon, be Derrick Henry. But I look at Kenneth Walker III, the talent is there. Right now, I'm just scared of the fact that has suffered so many injuries in the past. And it's not major injuries, but he will miss 2 to 3 games. That's a lot of games. And Zach Charbonnet, he doesn't have the juice that he has. So giving Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker III both the same amount of carries or touches in certain matchups, that would definitely help prolong the career of Kenneth Walker III and can help prolong his seasons moving forward. But fix this offensive line. And now look at this defense. This is all on Coach McDonald. This is why they brought you in. He was a great defensive coordinator with the Baltimore Ravens. You saw that defense take a major step back when he was no longer the defensive play caller. And now you have pass rushers up front. You have Derek Hall, who had 8 sacks on the season, 2 forced fumbles. Leonard Williams had a great season this year. 11 sacks, 1 interception, and that was a pick 6 against the New York Jets. And you have Jaron Reed, 4.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. Byron Murphy, you selected him in the first round. He dealt with a lot of injuries in his rookie season. But in the games that he was able to play in, he was a very good run stopper and he could push the pocket. So them moving off a guy like Draymond Jones, I actually agree with that deal. Move off of him. Let some of these younger players go out there and let them get some snaps. I hope that Byron Murphy can stay healthy because he has potential to be one of the best defensive players on the Seattle Seahawks for years to come because he can do everything for you. And I don't ever see him going out there and having a sack season like a TJ Watt, like a Myles Garrett. That's not his game. He's an impactful player. He's one of those defensive linemen. He may never have a double-digit sack season in his career. And hopefully I'm wrong. But he's going to be a major force moving forward because he can eat up double teams. And it's going to free up players on the edge. He's going to free up players alongside him. And we got to see the pairing with him and Leonard Williams. It was so hard to run the football on that defense when they were both fully healthy. And that's what the Seattle Seahawks are going for. Look at what Coach McDonald has done in the past. You build your defense, fast edges, versatility up front, and versatility on the back end. And speaking of players on the back end, Tariq Woolen was one of the best cover corners in the NFL. And that has been consistent since his rookie season. He's a phenomenal player. And then you have Devin Witherspoon, who is a complete maniac. He could play on the outside. He could play in the inside the slot also. He's a tackle machine and you can blitz him off the edge. He's the definition of a do-it-all player at the secondary position. And I look at the safety spot. As long as you don't have Jamal Adams and as long as you don't have Quandre Diggs, you're going to be okay at the safety position because you have Julian Love. I remember a few years back, Jamal Adams, he was terrible. One of the worst defensive players to have in the NFL. He's horrible. And Quandre Diggs, he was better than him, but not by that much. But you look at Julian Love and back-to-back seasons right now, he has been your best safety. He just had 12 pass deflections and 3 interceptions, and he was a tackle machine on the back end. And you have Kobe Bryant also, who had a pick 6, 3 interceptions, 48 solo tackles, and 6 pass deflections. So your defense is going to be good. This is one of the situations to where I now have more faith in their defense than I have in their offense, and that has not been the case over the last 3 to 4 years with Seattle. Hopefully they don't trade DK Metcalf. I'm a sucker for when homegrown players, when they stay with their team all the way through, but I understand this is not the 80s, this is not the 90s. A lot of players are going to move on, but DK Metcalf seems like he wants to leave. It seems like he wants to make more money, and he wants to go to a contender also. So be on lookout for that. And they don't have to trade DK Metcalf right now. They could trade him on draft day. They could trade him after the NFL draft. So expect for this to take some time because Seattle Seahawks are willing to listen. They may not get a first round pick, but they could easily get a second or a third round pick for DK. Hell, they may get a first round pick because he's 27 years old. He's not even 30 yet. But the fact that he wants a contract extension, I can see a lot of general managers coming out, and this would be smart, and saying, I'm not going to give up a first-round pick for a veteran wide receiver that I have to pay. And even though I love me some DK Metcalf on the field, he has a temper problem. There's been a lot of times in the past, especially against the Seahawks, especially against the San Francisco 49ers, pardon me, he will go out there and he'll just crash out. He'll push a player from behind. He did this against the Los Angeles Rams where they'll say something to him. And, DK Metcalf is a bigger wide receiver. He'll just pick up a cornerback that is maybe only 200 pounds, get him by a shoulder pads, and slam him down to the ground. He has to calm down with that because you're almost 30 years old. Keep your composure. If he goes to a different team, he's going to be an X factor. If he stays with the Seattle Seahawks, even better. But it seems like they're moving into a different direction without Tyler Lockett, and I agree with that move. Let that veteran player go. He's not the same player. And I definitely agree with the move of letting Rayshawn Jenkins go and the same And the same with Draymond Jones. I'm not going to come on here and hate on the Seattle Seahawks. I still like the pieces that they have. But you move on from DK Metcalf, you're going to be a completely different team on the offensive end. If you move on from DK Metcalf, make this a run-heavy team and work off of play action. Because Geno Smith should never lead the league in passing attempts. He should never, ever be top 5 in passing yards. And it's not me saying because he's a bad quarterback. That is how you lose football games. Teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, they can get away with that with Patrick Mahomes. And we saw what happened in the Super Bowl. That got them in trouble. The one consistent with the NFL, since the league was created and since they came up with the merger, you have to win in the trenches and you have to play complementary football. And I look at Geno Smith. It's nice to have those weapons on the outside, but get back to what the Seattle Seahawks did many, many years ago with young Russell Wilson. Play great defense and run the football, work off of play action, especially in this division. But let me know in the comment section below, how do you feel about the Seattle Seahawks and should they trade DK Metcalf? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, I want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for the video, guys. God bless. Peace.